Hi, welcome to Coffee and No Breakfast. This is a thing that I record in the morning when I've had my coffee, but I haven't had breakfast. Okay, I've got two things today. I've got maybe three for things. I've got ESG scores. I've got celebrities who fly on their jets, and I've got short flights in Europe. You're not allowed to do short flights in Europe anymore. So this is just things I've noticed. These things, they're all roughly the same topic. They're about emissions and environment. So the first one is that a lot of European countries have decided that they're going to ban all the flights of a short distance, which is a good idea because they have high-speed trains between cities. So if you're trying to protect the environment, which is a good thing to do, and you think that protecting the environment is reducing CO2 emissions, which seems like it's a good thing to do, then using electric trains instead of jets to take short trips makes sense. And it also makes sense because I've been to Europe and I've taken high-speed trains between a lot of major cities, major capital cities of Western Europe. I've been to most of those countries on high-speed trains. And yeah, it's great. High-speed trains go from the middle of the city. So the thing that's good about it is that even if the journey is a particular length, you don't have the airport transfer time and the check-in time. So quite often you can just walk up and get on a train only a few minutes before the train departs, and they depart from central stations in the middles of cities. And so when I was doing like a kind of a backpacking trip around Europe with a mate, we went and looked at castles and cities and museums. We stayed at cheap hotels in the middles of cities, and we could just walk to the train station to get a train to the next city we're visiting. That was good. So yeah. And the other thing is, if you have to do the airport transfer, you take an hour to get to the airport, then you need 30 minutes for your check-in, and then you have to do the reverse thing on the other side and pay for a taxi ride to the airport in some cases. So it's actually just cheaper and faster to take the train short distances in any case. So that's good. So that's it. Next one is celebrities. There was some celebrity, she's a famous American singer, and some numbers, it doesn't matter what the numbers are. Apparently she clocked up more carbon emissions than a normal family would in 500 years so far this year. So she's burning CO2. She's burning fuel at 1,000 times the normal rate that normal people, some crazy thing. She's got a private jet. She's famous and rich. She likes to go to concerts in different places and let her fans see her sing. That's great. That's good. That's good. I totally support the arts. The arts are amazing. What are we as humans if we can't share our culture? That's what that is. And so that's good. But at the same time, if these celebrities tell all the normal folk to not fly on planes, especially to go to their concerts, that's hypocrisy. So, you know what? That means you can ignore it. Ignore hypocrites. Ignore hypocrites. If you go to I've been to a big concert, there's a famous band with a famous lead singer. He's been famous for like 40 years. And when you go to his concerts, he gives you a lecture about something. Gives you a lecture. It's not fun. I mean, yeah, they can make it kind of be fun in the moment, but when I look back on it, I was just thinking, like, it really would have been better if you just sung your famous songs and didn't give us a lecture. That would be nice. Anyway, what did you do? What did you do with all of that money that you got from people's donations? Okay, what else? ESGs. This is what I think ESGs are. I might have it slightly wrong, but it's the approximation of what the thing is. ESG is a social credit score for corporations. And what the letters mean, it's environmental and social governance. What is that? ESG is if you do something good for the environment as a corporation, you can get some points on your social credit score. If you do something that's good for society by pitching some particular ideas of what people think is a good society, if your company gives money to charity or gives the staff particular benefits, you can get higher ESG scores. But what are ESG scores used for? Do they help the environment and do they help society? They don't really care. They don't really care if they do or don't. How do you know this? I know this because there are some companies like aircraft manufacturers and oil and coal and gas companies that have high ESG scores. How's that possible? If you make jet airliners, which their only function is to turn fuel into carbon dioxide and put it high up in the atmosphere, how can you get a high ESG score? That makes no sense. If you're just a coal company and your company digs coal out of the ground and burns it, how do you get a high E in the ESG? That makes no sense. There's some other companies that do various stuff, but I don't want to talk about it. And how do they get high scores? Anyway, so who uses the scores? Investment companies. Well, why does that matter? Well, a lot of countries have retirement schemes for people which are self-funded, funded by the people. So in New Zealand, we have a thing called KiwiSaver. They have the same kind of thing in Australia. They have it in a lot of European countries. And Americans, it's called a 401k. These investment schemes are retirement investment schemes. And a lot of the companies that handle those retirement investments only want to buy shares in companies that have high ESG scores. So it works like this. Each month I worked in my jobs, some money went into my retirement fund. The retirement fund was managed by a big corporation, an investment company, and the people at the investment company buy shares in companies to make money with that investment money. And they only want to invest in ethical companies. How do they know if they're investing in ethical companies? They look up the ESG score. If the ESG score is high enough, they consider the company to be ethical, and then they can buy shares in it. That's what it is. That's what ESG is. So you know what that means? You can ignore it. As a normal person, you can totally ignore ESG scores. They don't mean anything because they're gamed. You know they're gamed because companies that make jet airliners, coal, gas, and oil companies have high ESG scores. So you know that ESGs, there's nothing that matters in the ESG score. There we go. So you can ignore it. You can give yourself permission to ignore it. This is what I do for a lot of stuff. I give myself permission to ignore particular things. You're allowed. If you think something is scammy, then you can just give yourself permission to ignore it. You're allowed. That's how the rules are. If famous singers do hypocritical flying around the world, well, you can just ignore what they say. You can ignore what they say. If politicians fly from New Zealand to go to Europe to a climate change concert, you can ignore what they say about the environment because they don't care. They demonstrate they don't care by flying to a meeting. They leave New Zealand, they go to a meeting, they stay for a few days, and then they fly back. That's hypocrisy. So you can ignore what they say. If a politician says stuff about the environment, what you must do and what you're not allowed to do, then you can ignore what they say. That's how that works. You're allowed. You give yourself permission to ignore it. So when a politician tells me not to drive my petrol car, I ignore them. I own 2 cars. I'm a single person and I have 2 cars. That sounds greedy, but you know what? I can't drive both of them at the same time. One of my cars is electric and the other car is hybrid. I bought the hybrid car because it's a cool shape. It's a weird, futuristic looking car. There was a time back in the olden days when people tried to make cars that they thought would be futuristic, and they made They made a futuristic hybrid car, and I bought it because it looks cool. And also, it doesn't use very much petrol. It's cheap and it's low maintenance. It's lightweight. It's made out of aluminium. It's a great car. And then when electric cars got cheap, I bought a second-hand electric car for half price. For half price, you can buy cars. You can buy an electric car for half price. You just wait a little bit, and then you buy it when after somebody else bought it. Somebody else bought it. They took all the depreciation. They took all the depreciation, and then I bought that car when it was cheap and drove it 80,000 kilometers so far. I drove it like 15 or 20,000 k's a year. That's fine. It's a great commuter car. It's a great commuter car. It's not so good for long trips. If you want to take long trips in an electric car, buy a better electric car. You can just buy a good one with a big battery. That's what you want to do. Anyway, that's it. That's my story. It's good. It's 11 minutes. Anyway, yeah, that's how I feel when I've had coffee and no breakfast. Okay, take care. See you later. Have a nice day.